Hello, and welcome to a study of the Gospel of John, lesson number 19, which will cover the pericopes that are listed in the NIV. Jesus prays for all believers. Jesus is arrested. Jesus taken to Annas, the high priest. Peter's first denial, and the high priest questions Jesus. This covers John 17:20 through 18:24. Jesus prays for all believers. John 17:20 through 26. In this pericope, Jesus prays for the well-being of all believers until the end of this age. It's much the same thing he claimed in Matthew 18 and 20. All authority, he says, has been given to me in heaven and earth. And since that was the goal of Jesus coming to earth, was to bring down from heaven the will of God for those who want to reach back and be the kingdom of God. In this pericope, Jesus prays for the well-being of all believers, and through this age, I repeat myself to make sure that you get that, because it is the key to understanding the aim of the gospel. I am reading N.T. Wright's latest book called When God Became King. He became king because his Son, one of the three in one, suffered and died and redeemed the whole universe to himself. He praised the Father to keep them in harmony with himself and with the Father, because as in another place, he says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. It is the earthly equivalent of the pre-creation condition of the heavenly realm on earth that has been God's goal ever since Genesis 3. And in fulfillment of this prayer, in heaven and on earth, he said, your will be done in heaven as on earth. That has always been God's will for his people, is to recreate the heavenly teachings in an earthly person here on earth. And in the fulfillment of this, Jesus will be arrested. It says, just as soon as he finished this prayer, he heard in the background the coming of the mob. It was both a mob and an official armed guard, the temple guards that the Sadducees who controlled the temple had as a private bodyguard. As we learned in class on Sunday morning, this was a mixed group, and that's the reason I call them a mob, because there was no single purpose. The Sadducees had one goal, the Pharisees had another, and for all I know, Judas the betrayer had another goal. The setting of the previous prayers is the Mount of Olives. Now, if you go to Jerusalem and you cross the Kidron Valley from the great West Wall entrance, you will be shown an olive tree that your guide, if you're not careful, will tell you was there when Jesus prayed. He's lying. It's only about 500 years old, but it's ancient enough. It was so well known as a place where Jesus used as a retreat that Judas knew that was the best way to find him. Remember, it had to be out of sight of the people, for they would rebel, for many of them believed he was either the Messiah or one of the prophets. And so he led the mob, and he went up to Jesus. And every time I teach this, people emphasize and are horrified by the idea of betraying somebody with a kiss. I don't know why that it has such psychological and spiritual impact, but it does. Jesus offered no resistance whatever. He calmly advanced to meet them, saying, "Who is it you want?" Voices from the group said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And when he said, "I am he," Judas fainted. Now, I don't know what that faint means. It might mean he had indigestion. It might mean that he was finally appalled at the enormity of what he was doing. This has led some to attribute better motives to Judas than I think the text supports. And that is, he wanted Jesus to be put under pressure so he would immediately install his eternal Davidic kingdom. Well, it didn't work, and Jesus was arrested. Peter drew his sword and jumped into the fray. Remember, he had said, "Even though everybody else betray you, I won't." He acted as impulsively as he usually does. But remember, people, the kingdom of heaven cannot be established by force, because you cannot force a change of heart and mind on a person with the sword. It just can't be done. It was tried later on, a couple of hundred years, maybe 300 years later, when Constantine converted and he had the whole Roman army baptized by force. Worst thing that ever happened to the followers of Jesus when they became the majoritarian religion of the empire. Because Constantine had the Roman army baptized. Because you do not, it is far easier to raise somebody from the dead than it is to genuinely bring a person to saving faith. And then the first thing that happened, Jesus was taken to Annas, the high priest. This is in John 18, 11 through 14. Jesus told Peter to sheathe his sword, put it away. He then healed the man's ear and peacefully accepted his arrest. The soldiers led him to the palace of Annas, who was either the father-in-law of Caiaphas or the high priest that year. He was the one who had suggested that it was better for the Jewish nation that one man die than that the whole nation perish. Friends, the Bible is full of irony because both of those things happened. Jerusalem was surrounded and destroyed, and the whole nation perished, not to be regenerated. Peter's first denial, John 18, 15 through 18. Peter and John approached the gate of the high priest's courtyard, but only John was automatically admitted because he was personally known to the gatekeeper. John vouched for Peter, and he came in. The night was cold, and Peter joined a group gathered around one of the fires. Meanwhile, as all that was taking place in the courtyard, inside the palace of the high priest, there was a meeting. Now, whether this was an official meeting of the Sanhedrin or not, I don't know. Given the context, it probably was not an official meeting of the Sanhedrin, but it was a meeting of the leaders of the Sanhedrin to plan their strategy. And meanwhile, Peter warmed himself at the fire. The high priest questioned Jesus about the content of his teaching and the identity of his disciples. The content of Jesus' response to an implied question that would work something like this: why did you have to arrest me? I have always been open and public in my work. Jesus challenged them to bring formal charges against him. Annas left him bound and sent him to Caiaphas, the high priest. Thank you.